Hello, and welcome to Tilting Assignments Part 3, Tracking Student Success. This is the third flow in the High Impact Practices series about tilting assignments. Tilt being transparency in learning and teaching. I'm Jennifer Hitchcock, a professor of English and the CETO Faculty Fellow for High Impact Practices. You can find here on the screen over on the left, a QR code that you can use to access these slides and other TILT-related resources. Some of the learning outcomes for today include to identify principles of transparency in learning and teaching, to develop strategies for studying and tracking student success on tilted assignments, discuss questions about tilted assignments, and discover further tilt resources. Many of you, especially if you're in Gateway Math and English, may have been asked to tilt one or more assignments in your courses, which tilt has been shown to improve student success. So you're welcome also remember to stop this recording at any time if you want to write down questions, and of course reach out to me with further questions. I'll provide more resources and contact information later in the presentation. So just to review TILT, in case anyone had not attended previous workshops about TILT, TILT is an evidence-based framework connected to the Reynolds Flight Path. And it's been shown to improve student learning, student success, and retention when applied to at least 2 assignments in a course. So the reason some of you may have been asked to tilt 2 assignments is that 2 is the minimum that was found in studies to actually improve these outcomes. Tilting assignments, why we do this? Well, it helps alleviate student anxiety and confusion, so they can focus on completing course assignments successfully and achieving those course learning goals, rather than spending time being confused and worrying and wondering what they're supposed to do and what their professor's looking for. When you use that TILT framework, they can relax and get started on the assignment more quickly. So what does TILT include? And of course, in parts 1 and 2, we talked more in depth about these 3 parts. For the resources here, if you access those resources, you can find the earlier slides from parts 1 and 2. So there are 3 main parts to TILT. And you see also in some of the resources, the assignment templates include these 3 parts. And these are things that a lot of instructors are already doing. But to fully tilt your assignments, you might need to go a little more in depth or clarify some steps, or even possibly adding examples. So what are those 3 parts? First, there's the purpose. The purpose section of the assignment instruction should define the learning objectives and explain how these objectives connect to the real world. These real world connections can help explain the why. The task, you want to specify the steps students should take to complete the assignment, including any guidelines and mistakes to be avoided. I found when I added a common mistakes to avoid section of my assignment sheets, it was really helpful. I was able to explain what some of those common mistakes were, and by reading it up front before getting started on the assignment, I found the students made those mistakes less often. It was also helpful to point students back after grading the assignments to say, did you read this section of the assignment sheet? And if they missed it, and it cost them in their grade, they usually didn't miss it for the next assignment. The last section of TILT is the criteria. You want to be sure to clearly define the characteristics of successful work for the assignment. You can use a checklist and/or rubric. Also, you want to include examples of strong and weak work for students to analyze. Ideally, you want to also include some real-world examples in addition to student-created examples. And having students look at those examples, talk about them. You can also annotate those examples. In fact, if you're having a hard time finding examples, especially real-world examples, remember it doesn't have to be perfectly matched to your assignment. It could just be that part of that example matches with part of your assignment, and you can just add explanation or annotations to explain the connection. But having these three parts in your assignment instructions will really help students get a clearer picture of what you're looking for so they can focus on doing the assignment and achieving those learning outcomes. So once you've tilted the assignments, and this is something you're probably going to hear more about from possibly your dean, department head, or other folks at the college, is about studying the impacts of tilt on student success. Again, tilting assignments was part of the college's Achieving the Dream work that later became the flight path. And so the college is going to be interested in seeing, and you as an instructor, you should also be interested in looking at your own data for your own student outcomes on these assignments to see how it may have impacted student learning. Okay, so again, you might want to study your own assignments, not only for your own information, so you can improve your teaching and grow as an educator, but also potentially be useful information to have and discussions at whether you're talking about meetings with your dean, talking about your APTOs, or other types of faculty evaluations, multi-year contract meetings, looking at your own data and understanding how your students are doing, what might help them improve their grades on assignments and overall in the course is going to be useful. Again, for you, also be useful at the college level. So Reynolds is going to be studying the impact of tilting assignments, also applying growth mindset strategies, and which is another high impact practice, part of my fellowship and part of the flight path. And also, they're going to be looking at the impact of using the new model courses on student success. And these things kind of interrelate because in the new model courses, there should be some growth mindset strategies and some tilted assignments. So ways that you can study the impact of tilt. Well, one is comparing overall student success. And in that case, we're talking about students earning a C or better in courses that use tilt, also looking at, they use growth mindset strategies, or just using model courses. So comparing overall student success rates. There's also going to be potentially surveys that will be distributed to instructors and students to gauge faculty and student perceptions of tilt, growth mindset, and model courses. So those are things to keep an eye on. Now you can also personally, I have really found that surveying my own students in addition to the official course evaluations, you can create a Google Form survey and ask anything you want. You can get really drilled down to details about how your students feel about a new assignment you're trying out, for example, how they feel about your course, your teaching, and you can get really useful feedback that way to improve your teaching. So you might want to give your own surveys, but also keep an eye out for surveys coming from your department head or your department chair or your school. Okay, so when we're thinking about surveys, other things that surveys might look for, and again, these might be coming from the college, these might be the type of questions you might want to ask your own students for your own purposes. But we would look at, this college will be looking at the following, including the percent of faculty in gateway courses that are surveyed who report following model courses, adhering to TILT principles, or emphasizing growth mindset. They might also look at the percent of faculty who reported positive perceptions of following transparent assignment design. And also in addition to asking faculty about their perceptions of how well these things worked, we also might ask students, the percent of students who report positive perceptions of the model courses, tilted assignments, etc. So again, you might see some questions about this coming up. Instructors, as yourself, again, to reflect on your own teaching and develop ways to improve your own teaching, applying that growth mindset to yourself as an instructor. Some other things you could look at to gauge student performance on assignments before and after applying TILT strategies. These would be useful as well, such as looking in Canvas for the percent of students who earn a C or better. Again, you could look at different grade levels. You could also look at how many students got A's, B's, but C or better is often a good baseline. And comparing that, how did they do on that tilted assignment versus the percent of students who succeeded prior to tilting. So if you had that same assignment before applying the tilt framework, and then you had, so you can look back in Canvas at previous courses where you assigned the same or similar assignment, see how many students got C or above, compare it then to how many students got C or above after you started tilting. Another thing to look out for, and it's not available yet, but will be available coming up either later towards the end of the fall semester or early in the spring semester, is going to be a new performance dashboard. This is going to be an instructor dashboard, which is going to allow faculty to look up your own student data. You can look it up by course, you can compare it to the averages for other folks teaching that course, not individually. You're only looking at your own data versus overall data. But you can see how your students do overall. You can also look at demographic breakdown. You can even see how did different groups of students do on the assignment. Did students and you can look by campus, you can look by all kinds of filters that can give you really interesting, useful information. So that's going to help you, again, to look at not only how students' grades changed. So if you want to look at how their grades changed specifically on assignment, you're going to want to go to your Canvas courses, and comparing. You might want to look at multiple courses before tilting to get more of a sample for that average, and then look at multiple courses and how students did on the assignment after tilting. So Canvas is for the actual grade on the individual assignment. The instructor dashboard will be better for looking at your overall success rates and seeing whether possibly that tilting assignments could have helped improve your overall student success rates too. And remember, as the college gets to focusing more and talking more about data and encouraging instructors to reflect on your data. I think one of my colleagues said, no one is looking for perfection here. They're not trying to use your data against you, but looking for improvement. So even if you show a modest, small improvement in the grade on the assignment pre and post tilting or in your overall success rates, that would be considered significant. So don't want to, think of data as a way to improve your own teaching and rather than something to fear. So other types of data-related topics to think about and when it comes to TILT and student success. The first official data collection that the college is going to do when the college starts looking at how this may have impacted student success rates is really going to begin in spring 2025. The model courses and the TILTs really was a brand new rollout for fall 2024, and as some of you know, we also had some, obstacles with new folks getting into system through some changes in HR, and so I think they're going to hold off till spring 2025 once folks have tried out tilting for a semester, and that's part of it as you're doing and implementing these strategies. It's a bit trial and error. You try tilting an assignment, then you see, were there some places the students still got confused about? Could you add better examples for students to analyze and reflect on, and so on. So you can refine your tilted assignments for spring 2025. That's when the data collection will begin. And as I said, the instructor dashboard, we don't have a specific date yet, but while data collection will begin at the end of spring 2025, it's going to be probably late fall or early spring when the instructor dashboard becomes available. And again, folks, when it's available, folks would only be able to look up their data using their EMPL ID rather than their name to help protect privacy. And they'll be implementing other ways to protect privacy as well. And then sometime in spring 2025, maybe where you see some surveys from the college distributed to help assess how our students are doing because of the tilted assignments. So at this point, and you're welcome to pause the recording at any time, but I just want to encourage if there's any questions or thoughts about tilting assignments or about studying the impacts of tilt or growth mindset. And I will say, if some of you instructors out there may have a lot more experience with doing your own data assessment and analysis, you might come up with even better ways to try to assess the impacts of tilt. If so, feel free to share those with CETL. We would love to hear ideas that you have. I also wanted to share, I have more resources available at the end, but there is also the Tilt Higher Ed website where you can go and find example assignments, templates, and lots of other useful resources, some of which you can access through my own resources as well. And as I said at the end here, and I have the QR code again for my own resources and these slides, as well as some links to some useful resources about tilt and transparent assignment design. And again, I really want to emphasize that if you have any questions about tilting assignments, how to tilt assignments, other resources, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm happy to set up one-on-one meetings with instructors. I'm happy to give you feedback on tilted assignments at any stage of the process. You can call, you can email, we could meet in person in Zoom, and so on. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And also, if you wouldn't mind taking a brief minute, to complete the brief survey after watching this video, that would be wonderful. We have the CETL survey to get feedback from instructors. And please, again, reach out to me, Jennifer Hitchcock, if you have any questions about tilting assignments.